welcome. I'm Oriana. I'm one of the consultants at Bailey and French, and I'm also joined by Emily.
Yes, hi everyone. My name's Emily. I am one of the learning consultants at Bailey and French, work alongside Oriana. Really looking forward to talking about human leadership today. So yeah, looking forward to today's webinar.
Yeah, and we will be particularly focusing on how we can kind of deliver human leadership at scale and how we can, humanize scaling out learning solutions. So hopefully it's going to be quite interesting for everyone. If you have any questions at all during the whole session, please just pop them into the question box as well, and Emily and I will get to it. We also will stay back for questions at the very end. So cool, nice. I think if there's nothing else, I'm just going to get started then.
Yeah, brilliant. We wanted to start off with a statement today just to get us thinking about human leadership. This statement came from HR research at Gartner in March 2022. They distributed a survey to more than 230 leaders, and they found that 90% of that sample believed that to succeed in today's work environment, leaders must focus on the human aspects of leadership. And really that's what we're focusing on today. And interestingly, in another Gartner survey also conducted around the same sort of time, only 29% of people reported that their leader actually had those human qualities. So the human element is recognised as an important foundation to effective leadership, but few organisations are actually sort of focusing on that in particular. What do we actually mean, I guess, by human leadership, and why is it so important now? I think we can all agree with sort of the advancement of technology. At the moment, it's growing more than ever. Things like AI, ChatGPT, if some of you have trialed that, virtual communication software, as we all are familiar with, Zoom and Teams and so on. So within all of that, how can we keep our human switched on? And with the pandemic as well, it's really accelerated all of that. So we can gain a bit of a snapshot of that here with these findings. So the first one, in 2020, PwC reported that 59% of all consumers feel that companies have lost touch with the human element of customer experience, and 82% said they want more of it. So I think there's a bit of a real gap in what we are really needing at work as humans, or that human, perhaps face-to-face element in relation to what we're actually gaining and receiving. So there's another one here from Deloitte. Deloitte reported that 84% of CEOs say that creating a more human experience is as important as solving this skill gap crisis, and that thriving over surviving is down to remaining human at that very core. So again, that word human coming up again and again, and we're going to be touching on that a lot today. And I guess for us to really truly flourish and thrive, not just sort of ticking along at work, we really need that human element as that foundation. And just another last one from Gartner again, focusing on human leadership improves employee well-being and performance, with organisations focusing on a human experience being twice as likely to outperform competitors. So not only is that human element helping individuals with their well-being and sustainable performance, it's also providing the organisation with a competitive advantage, which I think is really interesting. But what do we really mean by human leadership? Oriana, are you able to answer that question for us?
Yeah, well, I will try my best, obviously. But for those who have been following Bailey and French for quite some time, maybe already, you might be familiar with our human leadership product, or, us talking about human leadership a lot. And actually, being a human leader relates to having a purpose and, you know, in our roles as a leader, it's also about being more values driven and being authentic and inclusive and empathetic as well. So it's about, you know, building up emotional intelligence. So in theory, our human leadership is kind of part of several leadership theories that you see on the slide here. And like I just mentioned, we have emotional intelligence on there, which is about, you know, becoming a leader who's better able to understand themselves, their emotions, and how their actions affect others. When I'm saying leader, it's not necessarily those in leadership positions. It's actually, you know, the concept can be applied for literally anyone. So that's really important to note. And I think actually building up our own emotional intelligence, if that's within a leadership position or not, is very important in today's world. Servant leadership is also part of our human leadership, you know, our human leadership program, which is, you know, very much about being able to put others first and having supporting others to flourish and perform. We also have, similarly to that, we have stewardship. So it's about operating in service of those around us. And obviously we have strengths-based leadership, which if you've been following us again, you know, we at Bailey and French are very much, well, we are doing a lot on strengths, so on strength discovery and how we can understand our strengths and actually maximize and manage our own strengths as well as those of others. And lastly, we have authentic leadership as well as inclusive leadership. So authentic leadership is around being our true selves and bringing our true selves into the workplace and drawing on our values, principles, and morals as almost like a guiding compass to everything that we're doing. And obviously inclusive leadership becoming really important is about acknowledging and being aware of our biases and actively seeking out difference to get different perspectives and inform better decision making and having that equal opportunity to thrive. All in all, this is what kind of the background and the theoretical background, and I always love that, and I always get way too much into it, and because this is obviously part of my role. But all in all, this is what kind of informs human leadership, and there are 4 key aspects of human leadership that build on each other and can be developed over time. And I think Emily has a little bit more information on what those are.
Yeah, definitely. I think just to go back to what you were saying there about the fact that we're all leaders in some way, this can be applied to anyone. I think that's so interesting. I guess, you know, whether you're offering advice to colleagues or providing expertise, we're also needing to demonstrate these qualities of being a leader. So as you mentioned, there are 4 key areas or pillars, aspects, whatever you'd like to call them, that we feel at Bailey and French really represent what it is to be a human leader. So the first one you can see there is authenticity. So this very much relates to that self-awareness piece and follows sort of the first stage in Daniel Goleman's model of emotional intelligence, if you're familiar with that. It's all about really recognizing our strengths and our weaknesses, really showing up as our true selves, as Oriana mentioned, and also, I guess, being vulnerable and being humble about the limits of our knowledge. So if someone's leading in an authentic way, you know, they're maximizing their unique abilities and potential, being aware of what they can bring to the table, but also knowing when they might need that support as well. So I'd like to pose this question to you, and please do feel free to pop your thoughts into the question box. We'd love to hear what you're thinking about this. The question here, what unique strengths are you bringing to your role? So how do you demonstrate that authenticity? I'll just give you sort of about a minute to perhaps just have a reflection on that. And as I mentioned, pop any thoughts, experiences, comments into the question box. Got a few coming in. Compassion, absolutely. That's a great one. Any other thoughts? I think for me, thinking about how you demonstrate that authenticity, it's really about bringing your whole self to the role, and that has a number of different positive impacts on things like relationship building that we'll come on to later as well. So we've got quite a few coming in now. We've got humour, being genuine and sincere about your intentions and motivations, absolutely. Integrity, that's a great one. Unique, yeah, absolutely. These all really do relate to that authenticity aspect of being a human leader and showing up as your true self. Definitely. Great, thank you so much for that. Aspect of human leadership looks at inclusivity. So this addresses having more of an awareness of others, being curious about others without that judgment, and also being aware of our own biases towards others and appreciating their uniqueness and what they can bring to the table and their individual strengths as well. And being an inclusive human leader enables more innovation, as I'm sure we can imagine, for appreciating and listening to other people's sort of different perspectives and encouraging that diversity at work. That really feeds into more creativity, more innovation, and more human connection as well, which I will come on to shortly. And I think also when you're being curious about others as a leader, that helps increase well-being for those around you. If they feel like they're being heard and they feel like they're being understood by their leader, that can have a huge positive impact. So again, posing the question, when was the last time you felt included? Perhaps at work. What did others do to make you feel included? What language did they use? What sort of behaviours made you sort of feel included and as part of the team? Brilliant. Thanks for your comments. Every day. Oh, that's lovely to hear. That's really great that you're feeling included every day. That's brilliant. Again, I'll give you about a minute just to think through and reflect on that question, and what does inclusivity mean for you, and when did you last feel that? It's interesting to think about why you feel included as well, and what are others doing to make you feel included. For me, I think it's all to do with those small gestures. And for example, my manager gives me 5 minutes out of a busy day to just check in with how I am, offering support and asking questions about me and what I'm doing. Makes me feel really included within the team. Being listened to, great, yeah, absolutely. That comes with sort of being heard, feeling like you're understood by your leader. That's a great one. Yeah, also, I've got someone here saying when someone identified how I had skills to help in a specific situation, absolutely. So that's a great example of how perhaps your leader or your colleagues are understanding what you really thrive at, where you gain energy from, what your strengths are, and then asking for your support in specific situations that require those skills. Great. Brilliant. Okay, thank you. So moving on to the third aspect of human leadership, and that is role modelling. So all of these build on each other, and role modelling is really about how we are demonstrating those authentic and inclusive behaviours to encourage others to behave in the same way. And as human leaders, being role models for performance and well-being is so important. And this also really relates to that self-management aspect of Goleman's model of emotional intelligence. So also, having resilience and demonstrating and developing that as well in stressful situations. I think when human leaders are demonstrating those role modeling behaviours, it really does create a ripple effect of authenticity, emotional intelligence, and inclusivity as well in the workplace, which ultimately is feeding into that positive working culture that we're all looking for. So again, what might role modelling look like in the workplace for you? Please do share your thoughts, your comments. It's great to see them coming in. What does role modelling look like in the workplace? How can we demonstrate these authentic and inclusive behaviours as a human leader? Yeah, great one. Taking time off when you're ill so we can feel comfortable to do the same. Definitely. I think that sort of presenteeism is a big issue in the workplace at the moment, and as a human leader, you know, being it's kind of role modeling that authenticity, isn't it, when admitting when we need a bit of support, when we need a bit of time off. It's creating the culture where people feel that they can do the same as well. That's a great example. Thanks, Richard. Any other thoughts on that? I think I might have mentioned this before, but just asking questions, I think that's a really simple one. But with the inclusivity, it's just demonstrating your curiosity or your genuine curiosity for those around you, and just asking those questions and listening to the answers can be really a really powerful behaviour to role model as well. Yeah, we've got a few other comments in there. Brilliant. When you can see people recognise their strengths and consciously trying to utilise these every day. Absolutely. Showing calmness in high pressure situations. Yeah, definitely. That comes in with that resilience, I guess. I think we all encounter stress in all aspects of our lives at the moment. So I think that's a really timely and relevant comment. Thanks, Hannah. Providing a safe place to bring questions and problems forward. Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. And that leads me on to the final aspect of human leadership quite nicely, actually. And that is human connector. So this one is really just to do with that relationship building and that safe space. So all about developing and maintaining mutually satisfying relationships through trust and compassion, and really creating that psychological safety where people feel that they can, you know, take risks and make mistakes and raise challenge and problems as well. And that helps and all feeds into developing really high quality connections on that deeper level between you as a leader and your colleagues as well. And it's also about encouraging those connections between others. And that can really help with job satisfaction and happiness. And again, that psychologically safe environment, within that you're going to see much more creativity, more innovation, and more motivated individuals as well. So posing the last question to you, what have you done recently to maintain a human connection with others? How do you develop that deep and meaningful connection with those around you? And then how do you maintain that going forward? Again, I'll just give you a minute or so to think about that, reflect on that. So we've got a few comments. Went for a coffee off site to just talk. Absolutely. Such a simple thing, but we often just forget that can have such a big impact. And actually stepping outside of the workplace, if it's a bit of a busy and stressful environment, stepping outside to just talk about whether that's work or whether that's just life in general as well, can really add to those relationships. Maintaining quality time with individuals. Yes, turning off emails and chats when spending time with your staff, definitely. Yeah, just literally allowing that time for people, even if it's a couple of minutes in a really busy day, or even if it's sort of 10 minutes to do something a bit different, that can again create those deeper human connections. Yeah, and again, asking how someone is, pausing the work if there's a reason to stop and listen. Definitely, it's just those simple check-ins can be really powerful, and learning kind of comes in with that inclusivity. It's those checking in and understanding how that person is feeling and developing that awareness of others. So all of these aspects really do build on each other, and hopefully that's helpful to learn a bit more about what we mean by human leadership and what areas really underlie that. So I think now we're going to talk about how we can apply that when scaling up. So Oriana, can you tell us a bit more about perhaps what organisations are doing to scale up, and how do we maintain that human element when doing so?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, I think, scaling up can be really great for organizations. It's if it's successful in spreading the right message and the right mindset, obviously. Nowadays, many organizations are scaling up their L&D solutions using technology. I think we are all probably, I don't think anyone here has not been subject to some form of scaled up learning and development program or anything like that. But obviously using technology, and I think Emily, you mentioned that right in the beginning, how there's an increase in technology and an increase in innovation. But it also has its limitations, and we're almost losing that human element within it all. So, some organizations are scaling up through apps, and they are great and they're so easy to use, and you can access learning everywhere you go. But it's also only suitable for those that have a platform to access it. That human element is kind of gone, and that digital application can only take you so far, really. And actually, in I think, McKinsey article, the CHRO from a large financial institution actually quoted that talent managers have to get back to human by bringing leaders and employees together for real dialogue. And that's obviously going missing through an app. And this is similarly seen with things like chatbots. Some organizations are actually using AI to, act as a line manager function. So they have a robot or chatbot, ask their employees in the morning how their evening was and what their goals are for the day, which is amazing. But actually, you're not really you're not going to feel that cared for, are you, if you just have an automatic message come in asking you how you are? And it doesn't really address our underlying need for that social and human to human interaction. And obviously we also have virtual development programs, and they're great because you can roll them out in large cohorts, and you have hundreds of people dial into Teams and listen in a webinar and workshop. But it's really difficult to create a psychological safe environment for everyone, to feel comfortable sharing, being vulnerable within the call and within so many people in such a big group. So hopefully, going back to what we see here on the slide, hopefully by now we have a good understanding of what we mean by being human, and what elements contribute to that human leadership that we were just talking about. And when implementing solutions, whether this is leadership development or enhancing our well-being across the organization, or ensuring effective collaboration within teams, how can we ensure that this human element is maintained throughout implementations? How do we remain human when, scaling up these solutions from 5 to 500 people? So Emily and I actually, in preparation for this webinar, have been doing lots of research and came up with 3 key rules to follow when scaling up solutions and wanting to remain human. The first point is to consider your platform. Obviously, I think this is quite self-explanatory because I've been just going over apps and chatbots and virtual training, things like that. And a lot of people are using those online platforms, and they can be very useful when scaling up solutions. But again, perhaps it's time to think about how can you keep a face-to-face element where you can. So how can you keep that face-to-face element to enhance that human connection that we talked about? And that would also allow individuals to gain non-verbal information from others. So it's actually, other people will be able to see other people's body language and gestures, which is actually so key to understanding each other and not misinterpreting things. And where this isn't possible, because sometimes you really do have to get creative about getting that face-to-face element in. It's not always necessarily within your direct teams. Maybe it's only that other people from your company are also in the same city as you are, and you could meet up with them. Or, you know, there could be a peer learning group with those. And where this isn't possible, think about how to make elements of online meetings and virtual training more human. So can you have that interactive discussion, any polls or breakout rooms? Can you actually make sure that people, for example, are showing their face on video if they feel comfortable to? How can you make that more human? But even after, you know, engaging in digital remote learning, how could you bring that knowledge back down, and actually how can you then apply it within your team? So potentially you are on a virtual course and you are learning remotely within your leadership team, for example, but then can you actually scale your learning face to face within your teams, for example? Is there anything that you can do to, you know, take that learning further, share that learning face to face? The second point is obviously linking in with inclusivity of human leadership. Don't forget about individual differences. So it actually has 2 points to it. So obviously, it's the point of that no one size fits all. And, you know, people need to feel that the solution relates to them and their situation. So it's the one side of actually going ahead and evaluating and getting feedback on the solution you're proposing or you're putting people through. But it's also about considering individual differences in learning styles and needs when scaling up. So providing content with different levels and being able to contextualize that content to really make it most relevant to the individual. And then the last point is to remain transparent and develop trust, which is kind of feeding into considering your platform and also, you know, considering individual differences, because building up trust and connections when scaling and rolling out large programs is really important. And you really need to take that approach that works for the people, and by helping them achieve the best in their career, you can kind of build that trust and you'll be able to access more authentic information about your, you know, your workplace. And this data is actually critical to finding out, you know, capabilities of people. And it also means that your learning can really meet people's needs for now and in the future. So Bailey and French obviously has, as Bailey and French, we have come up, because we're really trying to humanize scaling out learning, we have come up with a couple of products to help with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we want to practice what we preach, don't we? So we wanted to highlight today just a few of our solutions that can be used for scaling up, but also keeping that human element. So the first one is the conversation mat, and a few of you might already be familiar with our conversation mats, but if you aren't, these mats are really great to scale up learning, but also remaining that authentic, open, honest and human element whilst doing so. So it's essentially a tool that facilitates open discussion between leaders or teams or anyone really to talk around topics such as human leadership or team flow, well-being, whatever that might be. They're best used face-to-face. It really allows people to get stuck in with their colleagues and develop tangible action points and quick wins as well to implement into their work. So those conversation mats can be really, really powerful tool. I think it'd be useful maybe to just give a quick example. Oriana, I don't know if you wanted to share how they're currently being used with our clients.
Yeah, of course. I think I mentioned that actually before when I was talking about, you know, needing to consider your platform. And I was talking about maybe senior leadership going through a program and then being able to teach, or well, to share their learning with their teams without us actually, really intervening. This was actually something that we've done not too long ago with one of our bigger public sector clients, that we really wanted to, make sure that the learning is not only going to stay within those people going through our training program. So we were able to actually give those mats out to everyone attending our workshops, and they are now able to actually self-facilitate those mats within their teams. And they can go through them themselves within obviously the senior leadership group, but they can also then go ahead and within team meetings, for example, go through the mats and share their knowledge with their teams, which is a great way to actually scale up learning and a great way to humanize that scaling, isn't it? And I think also with exactly the same client, we've also now used cards, because that's an easier way to use when you're in a hybrid team. But I think you can obviously go ahead and talk a little bit more about the cards as well. But it's just a great example, and it was a very very successful program actually. So it's a great example of how mats can actually be used, and also how cards can then be used to really make people think about the questions that are on those cards. You can kind of, every single question on those mats has a little pulse check, so people can rate themselves, and it's great to kind of get an overall pulse check of the whole company as well, so you can actually gather data with it, which is great.
Yeah, it's giving people a space to be reflective and ask themselves and challenge themselves as well. And as you said, the cards, they're a bit less formal than the mats, but they're really useful when scaling up. And they're perhaps great to be used in things like one-to-ones, or as a positive starter for a team meeting. At Bailey and French, we love a positive starter. We start our Monday morning with something positive that everyone can share, which is really powerful. And as you said, the cards can be used with hybrid teams as well, perhaps during video calls. So they are a great little tool to almost bridge that gap between face-to-face and virtual solutions as well. I'm going to move on just to talk about the final point, because we want to allow some time for questions at the end. But just very briefly, with self-directed learning as well, this is also something we provide with our online courses on things like human leadership, that really complement the mats and the cards to basically provide that initial knowledge building piece. And I think with online learning, to really maintain that human element, we've ensured that the course is completely self-directed, so individuals can go through that at their own pace. But we also want to get them involved, so it includes things like polls and videos, suggested articles, quizzes, and reflective questions as well, where learners can comment within the platform, share their experiences and their thoughts with other learners going through the same programme. So all of these solutions can be used with large groups when scaling up, and hopefully that's just helpful to give you an idea of how we're doing it, and ensuring to keep that sort of human element throughout as well. So I think Oriana's going to take us through one last bit before we open up for questions.
Yeah, this shouldn't take long. This is just to kind of really highlight what the benefits of those things are that we just went through, because obviously we are still having that human-centric focus within all our solutions, or our, those little tools that could help scaling up. And they're very flexible. You can use them whenever. There's a common language within different contexts. So even though if you're scaling up anything global, everyone will still use the same language, and they can actually be contextualized really easily, because actually the context comes through the discussions. The tools are just a tool to kind of, to give to people for them to then really think about those things, about, like, for example, human leadership and how to bring the human element into either their leadership style or just their way of being. Obviously, they are really cost effective because it's just really little things. And they are helping to embed learning simultaneously across any organization. So they can, we can just send out, for example, 500 pack of cards all over the world, and they can be done simultaneously. And I think I mentioned that before when I was giving that example about our public sector client, is that the mats especially give that company-wide, and also if you're doing it regular, it's going to be a regular pulse check and it's going to be a data collection. So actually we've had a couple of our clients who have been using one of our well-being mats as a well-being strategy helper, basically, to gather some data in a very cost-effective way, and then to build a well-being strategy on that. I think this is kind of it. Obviously, these are our benefits. We went through human leadership, what human leadership really is, and how it actually influences our scaling approach, and also our top tips of how to scale up in a human way. If you have any questions, please just put them into our question box. And I'm going to have Emily say a couple of words as well.
Yeah, thanks everyone. That brings us to the end of the webinar, but we'll stay on for 5 minutes or so to allow time for questions. We'd love to hear your thoughts, your comments on this topic of human leadership, and any questions that you may have. Of course, if you go away and reflect and come up with more questions, please do reach out to us and ask those. We'd be happy to help, and keep in touch as well. We run these webinars quite frequently on other topics around human leadership and collaborative teams as well, so please do keep in touch. But as I say, if you have any questions at all, please do pop them in the question box and we can help with those. But if not, we'll leave you to the rest of your afternoon. Have a lovely rest of your day, and thanks for joining today. But as I say, we'll stay on for a few more minutes in case there are any questions.
Amazing. Thanks everyone.
Thanks all, lovely to have you here. Stay on another minute or so, just in case anyone has any last minute thoughts or questions. Got one question: will you be doing any more sessions from Noreen? Yes, absolutely. If you mean webinars, we run a weekly strengths discovery webinar every Tuesday on sort of discovering your strengths and how they can be applied in the workplace. And then webinars like this one today on lots of different topics are not as regular, but we love our webinars and chatting to you all, so they do come up, so please do reach out if you'd like to know when they are happening. We do also post them on LinkedIn as well, so that's quite a good place and platform to keep up to date with that. We can send you over some more details, Noreen. That's not a problem. So Oriana, we've got another question in the chat. Where can I buy these maps and cards? Are you happy to answer that one?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, Richard. So you can buy those mats and cards actually on our website, or you are just able to contact us for those as well. So it's quite straightforward and easy, really.
Brilliant, great question. Thank you. Any other questions? I think we'll stay on for another minute just in case we have any more come in.